I think what we're talking about here today is not simply the technicalities of New York State election law, though we need to talk about that, nor are we here simply talking about the presidential election, though we need to talk about that. We're here today because we want to talk about who this political system belongs to, whether it belongs to the parties or the people.
Independent voters can't vote tomorrow.
Now you're on to a big issue. Nothing much I can do about it. It's bad New York State election law.
Some New Yorkers registered as independents cried foul when they couldn't cast a ballot Tuesday. But the rules of when and how someone can vote in the Empire State has not changed for decades.
3 million people in the state of New York who are independents have lost their right to vote in the Democratic or Republican primary. That's wrong.
Certainly there are states that have what they call open primaries and anybody can vote. I don't see New York State changing anytime soon.
Today I'm volunteering. I'm making signs for the open primaries just to go to City Hall and do the protest.
My name is Fred Thiel. I'm a member of the New York State Assembly. And I'm going to tell you that the laws are skewed against independents, whether it's voting or the entire electoral process.
Citizen voters should not have to join a party, a political party, to vote. And tax-paying citizen voters should not have to pay for elections we cannot vote in.
New York State has some of the most archaic voter laws in the entire country.
It's time for generations to stop taking shots at each other. It's time for politicians to realize that they risk alienating an entire population of voters if they refuse to give us an equal seat.
This growing community of voters are barred from our primaries at all levels, including next Tuesday's presidential primary.
What's motivating this is something very simple but very profound, and that's this: reform of our political system, reform of our broken politics must start with the people. We are not going to be able to fix anything that's wrong with our politics if the American people are not fully enfranchised and able to participate at every single level.
I want people to be able to participate in the ways that they want to participate, not the ways that they're told to participate. And I want to get candidates elected who can be responsive to me, not to, the parties.
We had to register in a certain party before the debates even happened. So you really couldn't get a sense of how people were going to talk about certain issues that were going to come up. So not even just me, but a lot of minorities feel slighted because, a lot of you didn't get a chance to hear about people feeling on these issues and what they're going to do in office.
The notion that we can't have innovation, new ideas, progress, and development is something the American people are very thirsty for. And putting gridlock and partisanship and wrapping it up in a bow and calling it stability is a lie and it's a deception, and the American people know it, and that's why the open primaries movement is growing all around this country.
And by the way, New York State, we're a minority out there when it comes to closed primaries. And that's what it is, a closed primary.
You look out in places like California where they've gotten a more open system with the top two primary and nonpartisan redistricting. You see, for one, more voter participation. You see more types of candidates getting elected, more instead of the establishment, you see more insurgent candidates, more minority candidates, different coalitions being built than you see normally. So it definitely allows different types of things to happen, and that's what I'm into.
New York City. And for those of you who are not millennials and who may remember things that happened 15 years ago, such as myself, you will recall that the political parties, every elected official, virtually every editorial board, every good government group stood forth to crush the issue of opening up primaries to all voters. That was 15 years ago, and that's where the political establishment first showed its hand on this crucial democracy issue. Now, what I will say to you about this is that though that issue was right at the time, it was not right. That is no longer true. It is 15 years later, and in the opinion of millions and millions of Americans, this is an issue whose time has come.
So you can see why our faith is steadily being reduced in the system. When the public vote is heavily skewed towards establishment voters that candidates can easily campaign to, while ignoring the independent masses.
And it's easier to campaign to a certain type of individuals. Like with Democrats, it's easier to campaign to unionists. You don't have to campaign to everybody. You don't have to campaign to all the people. You can just campaign to certain voting blocks. And as African American, I felt slighted because not all African Americans vote the same way. I feel like there's a lot of pandering that the Democratic establishment has done. They haven't really done anything to address issues, and they haven't come to the forefront. The Black Lives Matters issue has really brought a lot of issues to the forefront that they weren't talking about before. So it shows that although we feel that they have our allegiance, they weren't actually taking the steps to actually do that. They would say things and then get in office and not actually do the types of things. So I feel like the growing minority independent population is better because now you have to specifically go towards specific individuals, specific communities, and address their concerns. But I feel like the gap between it is because the perception that a lot of my ancestors or my grandfather, my grandmother have had of how we should vote, and that they tell me no matter who the Democratic candidate is, we have to vote for them. It doesn't matter who on the Republican side wins. We can't let them win. But I feel like that's just us settling. We shouldn't settle for a candidate if they just win. They should have to earn our vote, not just basically because they feel like they represent our issues. They should get it automatically.
The USC Schwarzenegger Center released an interesting study last week that showed something remarkable. In the states that conduct open and nonpartisan primaries, people that get elected to office are more likely to return a phone call from a constituent. Lo and behold, when you open up the system and you let everybody vote, you let all voters vote, you get elected representatives that represent the people and not the special interests.